If your animal fur is looking a little bit flat, harsh, or even cartoony, then this might be why. One of the biggest mistakes that I see is outlining the fur first. And I get it because our brain sees the outside shape and it immediately wants to draw around it. Very bossy, I know, but it's not always helpful. Here I am using the edge of my tip and I am tapping down to create a softer edge, and it's just the darker shadowing underneath those little fluffy paws. Real fur doesn't usually have one solid line around it, or like now through the little toes. It has soft broken edges, little changes in the values or contrast in the colour, and the fur moves in different directions. Here I am adding some of the darker fur lines, and now I am not outlining them. This is a soft edge. I'm using the wide edge up here and I'm twisting the pen away from me, and I am pulling down to create that shadow underneath. If you look at these little paws, you can see different values or colours in the paws, and the darker fur is actually underneath the lighter fur. So I'm starting to create that darker shadowing first. Instead of burning one strong outline, I'm breaking up the edge in between these paws. Uneven strokes are fabulous for creating fur. Some marks are darker, some are softer, and some areas are left completely alone. I'm back to using this wide shade again, and I'm building up very slowly. Got to build it up in lots of little layers, building up the fur between the feet, so then we can see that it's two paws together. Gently tapping down to add that slightly darker shadow. Again, using that first quarter of that tip, twisting it away from me and building up those darker fur marks underneath. Just gently tapping down. And you'll notice that I'm not scribbling backwards and forwards either, because if you scribble backwards and forwards, it creates those stop-start blobs, and we want to avoid those too. Up here, I'm using that wide edge again to fill in some of that light fur, because even though it's light fur, it still has some colour, even if it's only subtle. Using that first quarter of the tip, twisting towards me, and I'm bringing that base layer of fur down the outside of the toes. As I move on to the toes, I'm still avoiding the heavy outlines. I'm using shadows to separate the shape. The darker areas sit in the creases, under the toes, and between the paws. And it gives the paw its form without making it look like a cartoon sausage. Let's face it, we don't want outlined cartoon sausages. We want soft little kitten paws. I'm also paying attention to the fur direction. The strokes aren't all going the same way, because fur does not behave that politely. It doesn't go in one direction, and it looks unnatural when you create it that way. I'm filling in some of this shadowing down on this little toe area here, and I've already got a base layer in, and I'm just adding a few more layers. I'm using a little bit more of the tip here, and I'm going to add some fur lines. So these are more singular, whereas on this paw I haven't done singular hairs because we don't need it. Now I've built up the base layers, this is where I'm adding some of the singular hairs. Of course, in different directions. So making sure that I see that I had where the outline was, where my pencil line was, I've gone over that. So I'll always make sure with fur that you go over those line art lines or pencil lines, because fur naturally does that. It doesn't stop at the line, does it? Building up some of the shadows in between these paws to bring that one paw a little bit further forward. And you can see now it's starting to look like two. The other thing to notice is how slowly the values are actually built up. I'm not jumping straight to like the darkest dark. I'm layering gradually, so the fur feels soft. And if you think about fur on an animal and you put your hands in there, there is so many layers and it is so thick and dense that is what you're trying to create on your artwork, on, well, as me on this piece of wood. I want to create that thick and dense look of the fur, so you've got to put lots and lots of layers in. Put in some more up here, those singular fur marks, not too many, and some are a little bit randomized, and that's just making sure that we're going in the direction of the fur. Be careful to watch the fur because it changes direction like the wind. So just be mindful to watch where the fur goes. If you want softer, more realistic fur, stop thinking outline first. I want you to think shadow, direction, broken edges, and gradual values. I want you to watch this as I add the shadow underneath these beautiful little paws. You can just see how it starts to pop, and those kitten paws look like they're actually stood on surface. Try that on your next pet portrait and see just how much softer that your fur starts to look. This part here, I've got a craft knife, and it's a sharp one, and I am just scraping out some of those light fur marks, and I'm making sure that I go in the right direction.